Newton's law establishes the relationship between forces applied to a body and its acceleration. In this very short revision, we will first look at Newton's law formulation before concentrating on three particular cases. First, the equilibrium of a system. Then, when the system is out of balance, the case of forces parallel to the speed vector, and then the case of forces perpendicular to the speed vector. Newton's second law explained that when a series of external forces are applied to a system, the vectorial sum of those forces is equal to the mass m of the system multiplied by the acceleration ag of its center of gravity. Center of mass is an even better expression. Here, ag is a variation of the speed vector vg during a period of time delta t divided by the value of delta t. The speed and its variation have to be observed in an inertial or Galilean reference frame. For flight mechanics, Earth is a very good inertial reference frame. In the particular case where all the external forces applied to a body are balancing themselves, the sum of external forces is zero. Then, the center of mass acceleration is also zero, which means that the speed vector is constant, which means, in turn, a rectilinear motion with a constant velocity. We call it a uniform rectilinear motion. This is typically the case of an aircraft in cruise or even in climb with a constant flight path angle and velocity. Let's consider this apple. It doesn't fall. Its speed is zero and constant. This is only possible because the force applied by my hand R exactly balances its weight mg. Now, if I open my hand, I suppress this force R and the apple is out of balance. And, of course, it does fall with an increasing speed caused by the action of the weight. Let's take now a closer look at this motion thanks to a series of stills extracted from the movie. They are all separated by exactly the same period of time, 100 milliseconds. Here, as there was no initial motion, the speed remains parallel to the weight, the unique external force. I don't know exactly when I opened my hand between the first and the second still, but during this period of time, the apple has gained the speed v0. Now, during the 100 milliseconds separating stills 2 and 3, it has gained the speed delta v. During the next 100 milliseconds, the distance followed has increased by exactly the same amount, corresponding to exactly the same increase of speed delta v. And so on for the following periods. The velocity is increasing at a constant rate, corresponding to a constant acceleration, and the kinetic energy is increasing also. This will be a problem for the apple when arriving on the ground, of course. Now, what happens if I throw it with an horizontal initial speed? I extracted here a series of stills separated now by 50 milliseconds, so that you get a better view of this apple motion. The first thing we can notice is that the velocity value is not really changing. The apple images are almost equidistant, so the same distance has been traveled during each period of time. Second, the trajectory is no longer rectilinear, but is curved. It's a portion of a parabola. So, why this curvature? As soon as I have released it, the only force applied to the apple is its weight, directed downward. Initially, the speed vector is directed slightly upward. 1/10 of a second later, it is horizontal. And 2 apples later, after 1 more tenth of a second, it is directed slightly downward. If we look at the speed vector variation during the first tenth of a second under the action of the weight, we can see that we have added the same vertical delta v vector directed downward as in the previous case, but this time its effect is not to increase the length of the speed vector, but rather to rotate it downward. And it is exactly the same during the next period of time, with a new rotation of the speed vector corresponding to the same delta v. So here, as in the initial freefall case, we have a constant vertical acceleration, but here the kinetic energy doesn't noticeably vary and the speed vector rotates. So, we can sum up the main outcome of Newton's law in this table. When the sum of external forces is null, the speed is constant and the trajectory is rectilinear. When the sum of external forces is parallel to v, the speed increases or decreases, and so does the kinetic energy, but the trajectory remains rectilinear. And when the sum of external forces is perpendicular to v, the speed vector rotates, kinetic energy remains constant, and the trajectory is curved. I hope you have now a good understanding of the motion of a body under the effect of external forces. Oh no, I must save it.